it's your boy Sats.B. I'm back. 5-test masterclass with a new master for a session today. Yvonne Sinniah is in the building today, man. So awesome that we met at Bobby's event.
Yes.
Thank
you, Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby's doing his networking thing, connecting people like us. So Yvonne and I were hanging out backstage before we did the catwalk. And I was like, tell me about you, because we're on the poster together, but I don't really know who you are. And she went into this awesome introduction about how she helps people figure out some really important stuff. And we're going to talk more about that. But I was like, wow. And at that time, I didn't even know I was going to do the 5-test masterclass stuff. I was just like, what an awesome person. How do I get to hang out and learn more from you? And then this whole show happened. So let me do the formal intro, guys. Give me like 30 seconds. Yvonne Sinniah is a relations advisor, okay? Speaker, writer, and founder of Love Inspired Events Management. Her focus and mission is to help individuals achieve peace, happiness, and fulfillment in their core relationships. Three big things, man. She's committed to helping people in today's society to clear out the noise and stay focused on what's important to them. And, you know, the noise has so many different definitions. I've got a very noisy head, which we'll talk about. And
we all do.
Yeah, and, you know, we really want to talk about how do we create sustainable, meaningful relationships. And you had the word spaces in there, which is also very interesting for me, because I believe in feng shui, and maybe that's not what we're talking about, but when I read it, I'm like, this is really cool. You know, how does a place influence a relationship? How does a relationship make you better? So I'll shut up, and thank you for coming on the show.
I love hearing you talk, though. It's so good.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
So maybe we dive right in. And ask the most obvious questions that people are going to have when they're watching it. What makes her a relations expert, right? So why don't you tell us a little bit about, like, you know, where you're from and how, you know, at a very sort of macro level, you get into this? Because by trade,
I can share with you, because people ask me, like, how are you a relations advisor, right? And I actually really believe, Sathish, that in life, you fall into things naturally based on what you're interested in, passionate in, what you're meant to do. And it took me some time. I think it probably took me a solid 33 years to figure out there's this voice, right? There's this, like, we have this, like, purpose. And it just takes some time to listen to that voice. And when I heard it, I was like, I am not going to let any noise get in the way. Not someone saying, well, you don't have that degree in that specific thing. You know, I have enough education, like masters, all that's, like, you know, life strategy stuff. And I'm like, no, but I'm going to apply, like, wisdom. And I'm not going to wait. You know, when you're always waiting to have the perfect degree, this perfect time. And I was like, I'm just going to take a step. So it started with, and I feel like I have a very diverse background, the different countries I've lived in, different things I've seen, and conflict and all of that, that from childhood I felt like I saw things. And I always felt like, why aren't we doing it this way? What's keeping that person from doing it that way? You know, what is holding them back? These are natural questions.
So it just as a context, like, where were you born?
I was born in Sri Lanka.
Okay.
So Tamil girl.
This entire interview is going to be done in Tamil now.
I'm kind of happy I said that.
Let it out.
I'm like, Mom, I spoke Tamil on TV.
So you're born there, and then how long were you there?
Yes, so I was there for 2.5 years, and, you know, Sri Lanka, the history has a lot of conflict. And so my parents, they chose to live in Dubai. So from the age of 2 to about 11, I was in the Middle East, raised in a British school system. And then there was the Gulf War.
Were you speaking Tamil, though, in Dubai? Did they speak Tamil?
You know what? Until the age of 4, I was speaking Tamil. And then I think it's the school I went to. They kind of, like, asked my parents to speak in English, and I lost my Tamil knack. And I just picture a 4-year-old me speaking in Tamil. That would have been awesome. Like, I feel like now I can make do, right? No one can, like, the best is when you're in an elevator and people don't think you know, and you're like, I know exactly what you're saying.
The best is so many of these artists I meet don't know I can understand Tamil. Or when I'm hanging out with my sister and these guys are, like, talking about her. And then I'm like, you're talking about my sister, right? And they're like, oh shit, that's me.
Exactly.
Like, it's cool,
it's
man. Like,
it's
cool, but yo,
it's
just
good.
know that I
it
know
helps.
what you're saying. So don't get it. Like, keep it rated PG.
I'm a Tamil girl.
Yeah, man. So from Dubai.
So Dubai, and then from Dubai they moved to Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, and that's where I grew up in Meadowvale. Yes, Meadowvale girl. And then, did the McMaster thing, followed the sciences. Parents probably wanted me to be a doctor, all of that stuff. And, still followed a lot of the traditional paths and making sure I have, all that. But I have to give kudos to my brother for always following his heart.
Yeah.
And I think I thought he was a rebel, but really he was following his inner voice.
Right.
And that gave me a lot of drive when I started hearing mine.
Huh, okay.
And it started with Love Inspired, which is an events management company, creating spaces that are meaningful.
Okay.
It started with creating meaningful spaces, but what fills the space are people. Right. So creating meaningful moments, and in creating that and understanding self-awareness, like you'll hear a lot of things I talk about, Sathish, is like understanding yourself.
Right.
And I think because I was creating meaningful spaces and studying about self-awareness and helping people through those spaces, this natural relations advisor thing just started coming out. I was writing for Anoki Media.
Yeah, shout out to Raj.
Yeah, thank you, Raj. And I'm still writing for them as their relations advisor, and I've been doing that for about 5 years. And
so you're the one who gets all the emails.
I do, and
it's
like I'm the Dear Betty. I'm like
do you have a pseudonym, or they know you?
No, they really use me as Yvonne Sinniah relations advisor, and Hina Ansari and Raj Gurn, the two of them have just supported me in being able to be a voice through that. And then I realized they do give me a global voice. It's targeted at the South Asian community, but it's a global voice. And
without saying who, can you give me an example of one letter you might get?
Oh God, I can't even. So one was, how to date cross-culturally.
Oh, okay.
Right? Can you imagine in our community? It's people do that, but it's hard to navigate, how to truly be yourself and still make your family feel safe. And you want to do all the right things in that, and you're not going to give up the love of your life too. You've met the right person, but how do you bring that person into the fold?
And was it strategic to keep your identity public and not have
my identity or that person's identity?
Or my identity. They know they're writing to Yvonne.
Yes, because I always keep people's identity confidential. And I think from my life experience, I'm in the zone of think what you want to think of me. I'm going to speak my voice. And that's the decluttering of the noise, right? So I'm okay being public, and I think people want that because they feel like they're talking to a real person, right?
Well,
not someone hiding behind something.
And it's an interesting struggle. I remember year one desiFEST where I said, no, we need a brand. And in a chaotic youth world where there's no identity, I'm the guy. I'm tattooed, I'm educated, I'm an entrepreneur. And so if parents like the educated, successful entrepreneur side, and then they'll meet the tattooed rebel side, they can't discount now. On the flip side, kids that are like, oh, this guy is cool, look at him as an artist, he wears a tattoo, and then they're like, oh, but he's also educated, he's got his own business. So we wanted to break the stereotype, but I was so nervous being the face, because if shit went down, I'm like, my face is etched in the book as something horrible. And my dad back then was like, why is this guy doing all this? It's bad enough that he doesn't have a job. And I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. He's like, no job. Now you're doing this thing with posters, all my friends see your face. I'm like, geez, but then, you got your face out there.
And Sathish, you take that, and sometimes on the female side, it's sometimes even worse, they want their daughters to be a certain way and all of that, right? And so I completely understand. But I think when you have that fire, nothing stops you. And I think when your parents understand, and my parents, they're coming around, and I think they see it, when they understand that fire isn't fueled by ego. It's like your calling. It's bigger than us, right? And when you really realize that it's not my ego I'm feeding, I'm actually helping people break barriers. You're breaking taboos. There are things in the community that hold so many people back, and you're just being the face to break the taboos in a really good way. Not to be a troublemaker. You're not doing it to trouble people. You're doing it to help the community grow. And I think my parents, when they're seeing that and the community seeing that, they're understanding.
The one word that I've always loved, and somebody said this 10 years ago, and I still remember, is permission. So much of our culture is about permissions, right?
Yes.
From my dad, from my mom, from my uncle, from my village, from my town, and I feel like people like you give people the permission to be something else without the permission from people that they want. Right?
And I think I still struggle with that. People think, I've had friends or, people I've mentored say, you're so fearless, right? And inside I'm like, they don't know how much fear I actually have to battle, right? Like, I have my fears, and I have the very typical, like, I want my parents to be proud. I want my kids to be proud. I want to be happy. All of those struggles I still have. I'm so human that way. And I think when people say, like, you're so fearless, I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
But I really, I am a human person just like, struggling those same things. So
that's amazing.
I love it that we connected at Bobby's because I see like the journey, right? You would have had to go through. I didn't know of you before.
Yeah.
And you're doing such big things. So
clearly none of the desiFEST advertisement made to you.
I so mean.
None of our spam made it to Yvonne.
It's like, I've heard of desiFEST. I heard of desiFEST. I've never met Sathish Bala though.
So today,
that was interesting.
We really want to focus on relationships.
Yes.
Okay. But I want people to understand that this is not another dating conversation.
Thank
there's
you.
enough people that talk about dating. I want to actually talk about a little bit of dating because
that's fun.
That's how the
like
population is going to grow. That's cool. I get it.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about relationships between parents and children. I want to talk about siblings that don't know how to get along.
Right.
Like as much as I love my siblings, man, we don't really know how to be siblings. Because
I
our parents
understand.
never took us out. They never created moments for bonding. It was very much we're gonna keep you alive until you're old enough to get the fuck out and do your own thing.
Like survival.
So even sibling relations are really interesting. And then once you start to add marriage, and then you got to figure out how to be a husband or a wife. So I want to really talk about how can we keep the conversation broader.
Yes.
And really focus on how does somebody really think about relationships, right? And what does that mean? So, how do we get going? How do we start?
So
where do we start in this massive topic?
Where do we start? So I love that you have the 5 tips, because I'm thinking global advice. Like, you should be able to take this and actually apply it in any parts of your life, and you're always applying it.
That's amazing.
You can't say, I applied all 5, Yvonne, Sathish, like nothing's happening. You're always applying it. So I start with commit to knowing yourself and being true to yourself. Know thyself. Like, this is, I put that all together in one tip because it's a commitment to stay true to yourself and to know thyself. And that is a huge commitment.
Right.
So I even put that as number 1 because you're always going to struggle with it. You're always going to be like, is that really me? Or is that my ego? Is that the true me inside, the light, the truth that I'm supposed to live, or is that my ego flaring up? Right? And so when you understand what ego is and how that plays into your life, and then you understand your true self, you start navigating relationships really, really well.
So how do you get to that though? I can't tell you what the true self is, mainly because we put on so much. We put on these personas.
Yes.
And in the so if I sort of went, there's me, and then there's versions of me, right?
Yes.
There's me, and then the bravado, confident person comes out when I have to get into a boardroom to sell $1 million project.
Yes.
But then the same person is puking backstage before an event that I'm hosting, even though I've done it 100 times. But it's the same. So how do you start to even think about who's me?
So you are that inner true you is there always, okay? And I'm a very spiritual person. I'm raised Christian, but in general I say I'm spiritual because I connect to a lot of spiritualities. And I say that is your inner light actually never goes away. It's there. It's always calling you. It's always speaking. You just don't know it is. And you may, and that's why people go into meditation or prayer, because they're actually wanting to hear that voice. That's really actually you. Now, when your ego is coming into play, when you get super angry and you're reactive,
right?
That's actually a guard that's coming up. That's not actually you. That's another version of you that you project, right? So, I can tell, for example, and over time and age, I realized I'm older than people think. Is that you realize that initial reaction is actually your ego. Okay. Because you're getting angry really fast, or you're getting afraid, or you're snapping at people, or you're irritated. Right. That's all ego. And then when you take that moment to pause, and you're like, oh, that's not really what I wanted to say. This is actually what I wanted to say. When you have that inner dialogue, it's actually a dialogue between your ego and this inner you.
Okay.
When you're and I realized I didn't know I was doing that. You know, and then when you get better at understanding your ego and yourself, you can even do cool things like pull yourself out. And it's almost like you're watching yourself, right? And when you get to these different levels of, like, they say consciousness or being aware of yourself and all of that, it's a cool, like, you would actually start watching yourself going, I'm puking, but I'm going to get through that puking and I'm going to do better because that fear is going to get me there.
Right.
Like, you start being actually, you use that
Right.
well. So I always say your inner voice is always speaking. You wouldn't be doing all these things with so much passion
Right.
if that voice wasn't speaking. But I think with age and, like, trying to understand your reactions,
Right.
like, why did I get into that fight with that person?
Yeah.
Like, my ego took over.
Yeah.
I couldn't even hear that person.
Right.
When a person might have actually wanted to say something completely different, but because my guard was up, I went at it like, and I do that, you know, I do that. I'm human,
Yeah.
right? Like, I know this. So let's apply it to children, okay? Because I have 2 kids. Kids are very good at calling you out.
Oh yeah.
They're so good at that. And most, yes, you made that face. I'm like,
My little guy.
they do.
Yeah.
Literally. Like, I have my daughter who's so good. She's like, Mommy, that was really mean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I'm a kind person. I preach kindness, you know? Like, how could I be mean? I'm mean.
Yeah.
You know, and she calls me out, and I'm like, actually, baby girl, I'm really tired. You're frustrating me right now. I'm actually not speaking to you in the loving way that I want you to speak. We can't look at each other right now. Like, I need space.
Yeah.
I need to calm down. And then when I give myself I literally only need 5 minutes. Like, I can go from 0 to 100, but I need the 5 minutes, and I come down to, like, okay, this is what I really wanted,
Right,
you know?
right.
And then when my ego goes up and I'm coming at her in a hard way, her ego goes up.
Right.
She's
'Cause they're
retaliating.
reacting. Yeah, yeah.
And then there's this term, like, you know, what is it? Persistence calls for more resistance.
Right.
So I'm going with my ego and I'm charging at her. She's just so, you think I'm strong? She's like a firecracker. She just stays there. She's so strong. And I'm sitting here going, the only way I can reach that girl right now is if I put my ego down.
Yeah.
And I need time to do
Yeah.
that, you know? And that takes practice. And that's conscious parenting. You know, there are books on conscious parenting and lots of experts are on that, but they're talking about ego. They're talking about how are you going to let your ego come to the side, and this is the line I use. I know when relationships are successful, when the people can put their ego aside and prioritize the relationship.
Right, right,
You know?
right.
And the ego isn't taking over.
Yeah.
Like, I got to be right. I'm your mom. I have to be right.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of the times I'm not right.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting,
So-
man. Like, I think kids call it out as it is.
They really call it
you
out.
know?
And
I got these wicked pair of pants I love.
Yeah.
That I overpaid like a whole bunch of money than I should have, and it's got like these cool rips in it. And I was like, yeah, man.
Yeah,
you know?
like, I'm cool.
And I'll wear it. I come upstairs in the basement, and my son who's 4. He's like, Daddy, you going to work with holes in your pants?
I know.
I'm like, Babe,
Day.
these are expensive holes, and one day you'll have them too. But now I'm gonna go change because I don't
Yeah.
want to show them that
Oh,
Daddy
no,
goes to
no.
work.
I'm going to say, Sathish, like, when I get ready for work and I wear something, like, they'll be like, Mommy, you look like a man. I'm like, I look like a man? I was like, what? I was like, don't wear that blazer, Mommy, you look like a man. I'm like, ah.
Who asked you, first of all? Second of all, how many years before you get the hell out of the house?
Yeah.
You know? But what about those single folks, man?
Okay, the single folks,
that don't
okay.
have like this innate need to listen to a little baby girl, baby boy talk.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, like, they don't have people calling them out. So how do you call yourself out? Is you have I have to give a lot of credit to the single people out there, because to actually be okay living alone takes a lot of strength.
Yes.
You have to, and I didn't give a lot of credit to that until I found myself, now single. But you have to actually build not just confidence, but like an inner strength to be like, life is still going to be okay. I'm still going to follow my mission. What is my truest self? And I think that is actually the greatest opportunity when you're single to find your truest self. So maximize every opportunity you're at.
Right.
And, in my singleness, I found it's almost like I could expedite that process. You don't have a lot of other things to talk about. So you're just like, how am I going to be my truest self? How am I going to follow that? When you're single is the time you actually figure out what you want.
Yeah.
And you can be clear about it.
Yeah.
Like, don't waste time.
Yeah.
I would say that whole commit to being your true self, know thyself. You can expedite it when you're single.
Yeah.
You can start, in my sessions with clients, Sathish, I say, let's be clear about what you want. And you can't be clear about what you want if you don't know yourself.
Right.
You're starting to list what you think you should want.
And is it fair to
Right?
say, like, the answer to who am I will, in the beginning stages anyways, will be all over the map? Like,
Yes.
there's no harm in like saying, I think I'm this today, and then a week from now, you know what? I thought that, but
Yeah.
I'm actually this, and then this, and then this, and then eventually you'll see a pattern, and then you're that person.
And you're an expanding human being.
Right.
So you might decide, this is who I am now. These are my healthy boundaries. These are the things that work for me. These are the things I want to grow in. And like next year, it could be, okay, I mastered this. I didn't master that. I'm changing it a little bit. You're an expanding being. Like
Yeah.
we're always growing. And that's okay. That's actually you being alive, right? You're alive, you're expanding, you're growing. And I can't stay stagnant. I'm always growing. And that's why in my path and in your path, as you grow, you're sharing.
Right.
But you're not going to stay stagnant because there's so many things that you're buzzing and wanting to do.
Okay, we got number 1 down, people.
Nice. Commit.
Know thyself. Commit to you. And I like to be very careful in saying, we're not saying be a better you. We're not saying, you know, be different from a better perspective. We're saying just find out who that person is to start with. Like, what's your baseline, right? It's like,
know yourself all the time. Like, and I'm sorry, I'm going still on number 1, but it's like sometimes people don't understand their gut reactions are speaking to them. They don't know what that is. That's still knowing yourself. You know, why did I get that migraine? Why did I get that backache? Why am I stressing right now? Go inside a little bit, right? And so that's what I mean by know thyself. It's not about changing you. Understand yourself. Right?
Okay, we got number 1 down.
Whoa, we got number 1 down.
Now I know myself a little bit. What's
you do.
next, Yvonne?
Okay, so we talk about meaningful relationships, but what's a relationship? It's a combination of meaningful moments.
Ooh, say that again.
What's a relationship? It's a combination, a series of meaningful moments. So what you want to do is create meaningful moments. Commit to having meaningful moments. The good moments have to outweigh the bad.
I've never heard it like that.
Really?
Yeah, light bulb just went off. It's really interesting. Because you look at relationships as this complex thing, but when you dumb it all down, it's just a series of small moments.
It's a series of many, many moments, micro moments, like minutes. That's what it is, right? And okay, I love to say, and I think Sathish, you would be the same, like we're complicated, deep human beings.
Oh shit, I'm the most complex person ever. So
complicated, deep human beings. But because I'm so complicated, I try to keep things simple. Just keep it simple, right? Like, what is it that creates a meaningful relationship are the meaningful moments. And meaningful moments aren't always the fun moments, right? It's like I love going to Canada's Wonderland, or I like to, you know, read a book with my kids, or I'm talking to my mom on the phone. Those are all good moments. But also the meaningful moments are when they're sick. Are you just too busy to sit down and hold their hand? That's a meaningful moment, right? They feel loved. They feel cared for. They know you're there no matter what. Those are meaningful. That's why I said meaningful. Not. I originally wrote fun, great moments, and I was like, that's not it. That's very surface level. It's meaningful, and create those moments.
So how do you do that in a world where even before, like I grew up at a time where you need to remember the girl's number to call her, right? And then hope the parents don't pick it up and be like, hello, is your daughter there, right? But today, so much of those moments of like that fun, fuzzy buildup is gone with swipe left, swipe right. Right? So in today's world, how do we define meaningful moments?
Okay, so I know like dating is the interesting topic. We'll go there. Okay, so right away with dating, even that initial texting and that contact, make it meaningful. So if you know, so for the guys out there, when you know that this is someone you're interested in, make that initial text like so, you know, when I say meaningful, it's not just a hi.
No smiley face.
Nothing. It's like, okay, the girl knows you're going to say hi to like probably 30 girls on that. Like, come on. They know. They know. So it's like, you know, just come on. Like, throw something in there, you know? And so dating coaches, so I'm connected to a lot of dating coaches. And yes, it means reading the profile. Like, what about the girl? Like, you saw the picture. There might be a paragraph on Match. There's like, you know, pretty much an essay. Pick those things out. Like, what triggered you about the girl, right? So, or the woman, you know? And it's like, state something in there and say hi and be real in the moment. It's not just like, what coffee are you into? It's more like, hi, how are you doing today? It's a gorgeous day, and like wishing you know, like you keep it real in that moment and make it real you. That's why I say know thyself. Like, don't try and project someone else out there. And write something. Like write something so the girl wants to write back. Leave it as a question, leave it open-ended. So that you can have meaningful text messages and stuff, and there's always work people can do with that. Lots of work. And then in other relationships, I say sometimes when you're going to a family party, I get lost in big parties sometimes, but I pick the one or two people I want to have like meaningful conversation with, or I like to sit with the kids sometimes, you know, it's like more fun for me. So I'm always thinking meaningful moments, you know, meaningful spaces, right? Love inspires that. So you can do that in anything. You're doing this now with your work. You do that with your kids and your lunches and like your wife, you know, I love that. And your mom, those are meaningful moments.
Meaningful moments, all right. Jesus Christ, that woman.
Be nice to your mom.
I love her.
She's so cute.
I love her.
She's so cute.
What about workplace?
Oh,
Does that apply to workplaces
totally
too?
applies to workplaces. So boss, employee. You know, bosses are very busy. So when you have your one-to-one session with your boss, make it meaningful. Go prepared. Like you already know I'm like crazy prepared. Yeah, like I'm just like always prepared. But it's because I actually want my 1 hour with my boss to be a meaningful 1 hour for her. That even if she has a busy day, she has that 1 hour with me and it was like high impact in terms of her and me. Right? With my employees or you know, colleagues, when we're having a conversation, we're having lunch together, I want to enjoy that with them. You know, so I think when you start doing it enough, like it's that 25-day habit, right? You start doing it enough, it gets ingrained in you, and then people feel that, and that's how your relationships become meaningful because you're creating these moments.
So one of the things I battle is multitasking, right? And so is creating meaningful moments part of being present and sort of not multitasking? I'm a great multitasker.
So there's this term I learned about multitasking, and I annoy my friends with this because they catch me multitasking. They say I'm like, actually you're wrong, I'm time splicing.
Ooh, okay.
So you can't actually like send an email and talk to your colleague legit at the same time. Like your mind is time splicing. So if I'm focused on an email, I am clearly not hearing her talking about this shitty date she had, and I'm just like, I gotta send this email. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm listening. And then, you know, you say the buzzwords so she knows, but she knows you're not listening. And I'm like, I'm listening, you know, and then, but I'm time splicing.
Time splicing.
And I think I'm sometimes the greatest multitasker. Like I'm like driving, on the phone, having a call, whatever. And it's like, I have to be like, okay, this is where my mental energy is going and this is where my physical energy is going. But you can't actually you can't actually do two mental things at the same time. And again, kids call me out on it. I tend to daydream because I'm like very visionary. I like pictures. I go there, and sometimes I'm sitting and talking, and I like space out. And I'm so not present in that moment. They're talking to me about like all these games, and I'm just like thinking about like something else, and it's visionary. And they're like, "Mommy, like where are you?" Right? And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then I say the buzzword. They're like, "You weren't listening. You weren't listening."
I like your kids.
They're awesome. So good, and they're so kind to me. So meaningful moments in dating starts with the texting. Oh, and can I just throw in a dating tip in there?
Of course, yeah, 100%.
Guys, I shouldn't just say it to guys, but even women, right?
Tell guys.
I'll tell guys, okay, guys. Like, just initiate that initial coffee date. Like, stop texting forever and a day. Just go for the coffee date. Like, ask the girl for lunch. Just make plans, because the girl is, like, I know we're in a very, like, women can initiate and all that, and I encourage women to initiate, but there is a bit of, like, guys, like, when the texting is coming back, like, initiate that coffee date, and just, you know, let's just get to know each other, and women want that, and that's a complaint I get, and I'm just always encouraging guys, you don't have to be super aggressive, but I mean, it's nice when the man takes that lead, but just initiate a nice, meaningful, face-to-face. Right? Like, it's not all texting.
Which blows my mind. I see a lot of young people in universities, and they're constantly hiding behind this comfort level of a screen. And I'm saying, if she is the one, or if he is the one, at some point, you got to sit in front of that person and, like, deal with it.
You have to.
Right?
And they don't like to be called out on hiding behind the phone. I'm very upfront. Like, I'm very kind on this interview with you. But when I'm with clients, I'm like, I don't want to waste your time. So I get to know them, and I'm like, yeah, like you're hiding behind your phone right now. And no one wants to hear that, but in a trusting space, they'll listen to it. But it's just a lot of people hide behind the phone because they don't want to have that conversation. Again, not knowing yourself, right? Like when you're confident, like when you know you want something, you're going to make that time.
100%.
Just going to go for it, right?
100%.
So create meaningful moments.
Stop time splicing. That's my new thing now. Stop time splicing. I love that way. I love the way you put that together.
Yeah, and then Sathish, you can tell your kids, you can actually say, listen, let me finish this email, and then I'm going to spend this time with you, right? And that takes a little practice too, them learning your boundaries, but it actually, I'm always learning that too, so it's just...
My kids only need me when the iPad runs out of power. As long as I've got it jacked in, I can time splice.
So true, those iPads, iPads.
Tip number 3.
Okay, so tip number 3, and I get this from Stephen Covey's 7 Key Habits of Highly Effective People, is understand before being understood. So this is about effective communication, okay? So there are 4 kinds of communication. There is reading, writing, speaking, and listening. But what do we learn most of the time is 3 out of those 4. Right. We learn the first 3 in school very well. Yeah. But what takes practice is empathetic, compassionate, active listening. So I'm a talker, you can tell. I'm chatty. I can talk about any subject. But I actually, when I'm around my girlfriends and friends, what I'm actually always practicing is like shutting up my mouth and actively listening without time splicing. And like, because I'm like trying not to think of that email that I like I'm trying to like, nope, phone's down. She wants to vent. And I'm here, and that is so important. That skill is so important. Again, a lifetime skill. You're always going to learn it.
Here's where it backfires for me. Like you, I chat. But when I focus on listening and I like just relax and pay attention, every other person, everything okay?
Yeah, because it's so odd. It's so odd.
Everything okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm just paying it. Everything all right? You want something? You're awfully quiet today. I'm like, no, I'm just...
You're like absorbing now.
I gotta understand. I'm just listening.
Yeah.
Are you sure? Yeah. I'm like, dude, you get that a lot, right?
Yes, of course it is. Like, I'm very outgoing, and when I get quiet sometimes in the office, I'm going inside, I'm absorbing.
They think something is wrong.
They think something's wrong.
Yeah.
And like I said, in those big spaces, because I'm like the host and always, but I sometimes go to the spaces with 1 glass of wine and I'm on a couch, super quiet. You wouldn't even know I was there. Yeah. But I'm absorbing. I love it. I love being in that space. And when you actively listen and you embrace it, it's actually a wonderful thing. So this helps with conflict, Sathish. So when you go into, we're talking about meaningful relationships. And what makes things meaningful is also how you deal with conflict, right? And how you deal with conflict is that ability to understand before being understood. Because we're always ready to be like, but you don't understand. You don't know what I'm saying, right? If you're ready.
You don't know me.
You don't know me. Oh, I love that line. I use it. And then, like, you don't know me. And then the best is when you say stuff like that to your kids. I'm arguing with a 10-year-old. What's going on? But then... It's like, I'm a kid, such a kid. But understand before being understood is like the biggest. If I'm going to pick actually out of all the 5 skills, like that is so big for meaningful relationships. Right. Marriages, dating. Like, I always say it's be interesting and interested. Right. But what does that mean? You have to actually have the ability to actively listen and hear the other person, right? So for conflict, because we're talking about meaningful relationships, the moment you shut your mouth and you're actively listening, that person feels like you're actually going to hear them, their voice, their inner self, their truth. And then whatever you say is catered to them. It's not some blanket like thing you would say to every client or every person, right? Yeah. It's like their unique voice is being heard. That's when you establish trust. That's when you enable vulnerability. People are not going to be vulnerable with you if you can't hear them. They're just not. Yeah. And meaningful relationships, I'm going to quote Brené Brown. She writes, so Dr. Brené Brown is featured talking about vulnerability. She did a PhD on it. And that enables trust. When you are able in a meaningful relationship to have someone feel heard, that means they are letting themselves be vulnerable. You can't take advantage of that. Right. When you feel someone is in that vulnerable space and they're sharing something meaningful, you can't take that for granted because they're opening up a side to them they normally wouldn't open to others, and that's a trust building thing. So when you go into that space of understand before being understood, that is all trust building. That is all enabling vulnerability. Right. Key to meaningful relationships. all around, every relationship you can possibly think of, that is key.
And then, you know, at work, you're taught not to be that guy or that person, right? Like, you can't let your guard down. Somebody's always gonna eat your lunch, you know. So how do you do that in a work environment where we spend 10 hours of our lives?
So this is not to say you have to be stupid in every, like you have to use your smarts and your wisdom. So so vulnerability is one of those things, like, you know, people have to also earn your trust. You're going to use your wisdom. You're going to use, this is again the know thyself piece. Mind, gut, like heart, soul, all of that coming together is because you're doing that work. And I find that there's two kinds of people. Those who are just out there trusting, and I tend to be that. And I'm like, I get burned like 100 times. Like, oh, okay. Like, I got to shift you out of that circle a little bit. And then there's those who go with the, I'm not going to trust anybody. And I'm just going to, like, you're going to have to earn it. Both are not wrong, right? They're just different. But those who are in your space, in that vulnerability space, it's a relationship building way. So you'll be able to tell, sometimes it's the person who puts themselves out there is opening up a space of vulnerability. And it takes one person to do it for others to now feel they can do it. Right. But the thing is, if someone takes advantage of that, and you realize that's their personality, you start going, okay, now I know. Right. It's all information, right? For those who are dating, this is a line I have. Dating is data collection, always, right? People are like,
lines, yo.
Yeah, I got lines. Dating is data collection. You're always, and in relationships, you're data collecting. Whether or not you even realize it, your mind, body, spirit, everything, you're collecting data. Right? Can I trust this person? Can I be trusted? You know, and you're just always working on that. But the key to a meaningful relationship is that ability to go to vulnerable spaces and talk about things that are really hard to talk about and setting your ego aside.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that one. Number 4.
Okay, number 4, be ready for this. Don't let fear be the barrier. Be courageous. So a lot of us, many of us, the majority of us are functioning based on fear. We're actually not fulfilling our truest purpose because of fear. Our meaningful relationships or these relationships are not to its fullest maximum potential because fear on both sides are preventing you guys from going there.
Right.
Okay.
What are people afraid of?
Okay. Let me pick a situation. We are talking about the South Asian culture. There's a lot of fear around perception, even when women are in the dating field, right? They don't want to put their pictures up on Match.com. Right? Or you know, we have Bumble now. That's another one, right? So they're afraid to put pictures up because of fear, because of perception. I mean, that's just you trying to get out there.
Right.
How does fear play out when you're now starting to date someone, but you want to ask questions and you're afraid the person might not like you for asking a question? You have to dig inside. What's that fear about? Is that going to be a meaningful relationship when that fear is stopping you from asking a very practical question? Right? Oh, I don't want to be troubling. I don't want him to think that I'm like clingy.
Being nosy.
Or clingy. You know, women don't want to feel needy. So they want to ask a question. I'm like, but let's go to, so Don Miguel Ruiz wrote The 4 Agreements. Completely recommend reading that book. And the 4 Agreements is really 4 ways to live your life. Don't take things personally. Always do your best. Don't make assumptions. There's one more I'm forgetting. So what this is when you let fear get in the way, there's a lot of assumptions coming into play, starting to take things personally. You want to put those things aside, dig inside what's actually making you fearful, and then ask yourself why 5 times. So to dig to the bottom of that fear. I'm afraid because, my parents are going to think this. Why? Because why? Because you keep digging. And then you actually understand the core of your fear had nothing to do with that person. So you start digging. So I always say, work on your fears. There's healthy sense of fear, concern, worry. Like, this is normal, right? We have that. But if it's preventing you from having a meaningful relationship with a partner, your children, your parents, I'm always working in these areas, guys. Like, I am not perfect, but I'm working in these areas. But fear is what keeps me sometimes from having a difficult conversation because I don't want to be perceived as being the troublemaker. I don't want to be perceived as causing yet one more thing. So I use timing. but I decided in my head I'm not going to let the fear get in the way. And actually, it helped me and my ex have a very good relationship because I would let fear get in the way of having difficult conversations. And so I actually think in every core relationship, to get it to that next level, look into your fears and work on it and be courageous.
This is a very tough topic, mainly because, first we started with like know yourself, which is a scary thing in itself. Then we're like, okay, but face your fears, right? And they're massive. Like they're just
massive.
I remember when my father passed away, this burden of like success was lifted. This fear of like failing was constantly on my shoulder because there's somebody always saying, you're gonna fail, right? Not because he totally believed in it. He didn't know what success meant. So if it wasn't 9 to 5 and I went somewhere to work, everything goes as failure. So, I carried like this fear of success because I didn't even know what the hell success would mean. And then when he passed away, as much as, I missed all of that relationship, it gave me like this other version to just let go.
Like fear got lifted.
But man, I was like 38 or something like that before it happened. But those 20 something years, you're holding on to this stuff. So when you start talking about understand yourself and then face some of your fears, how do everyday people, does it take a huge, love and hate? I always talk about how either absolute love changes the behavior or something so sad and hateful that just sort of makes you, if you're in the middle, what do you need to get started?
Okay, so let's pick a work scenario. So I'm in a boardroom and I want to say something, but I don't want my colleagues to think I'm, trying to go against a decision. So I've got 30 colleagues. I already know 5 of them will have opinions. It doesn't mean I have to do it at that meeting.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to make a radical change in that moment. But the fact that I'm sensing that fear is already a step. And that's taken me time sometimes to speak in a boardroom, to say what I'm meant to say. Because I'm sitting there going, I can't say it, but why can't I say it? What am I afraid of? And so the next meeting that happened, I'm able to say, actually, I sort of disagree with this, and this is why. And then I let it go. But I know I wanted to say it again. So then the next meeting. So I'm always working on it. But something I remember whenever I push myself to challenge my fears, I'm paying attention to my body. I've noticed there are times I say things that I was very afraid to say that actually my bones inside me are shaking. And people don't acknowledge this inner fear that actually when you build that muscle, you don't actually, my bones don't shake now. There were some conversations I've had with family that it looked like I was fearless. Because, that persona is there that I'm like, I've now decided I'm going to have the conversation. But what people don't realize is actually my inner body was going through a lot. I'm shaking inside to have that conversation. I might have a good cry after. But for me, that was conquering a huge fear. And that's what I'm saying. It's so practical. You don't have to be on a mic like us, just like we just say things out there. But I'm talking in your real life relationships, thinking about what's holding you back from having that difficult conversation with your parents, right? There are some conversations I still haven't had. I still haven't had them, and I'm working towards that. This is very human. No one masters it. And this is what the life work is, right? So I always say fear is actually holding us back. There are a lot of mental barriers we have. There are a lot of conditionings we were raised with that aren't serving us. Now, they're great conditionings, like don't run across the street, idiot. Don't, right? But then there are a lot of other ones that are just structural mental barriers that are keeping you from living your truth. And those are the ones I'm trying to help people with. Those are the things that are keeping us shackled from our happiness, right? And that's what I'm working with people on.
And I also don't want people to assume that because we're 2 brown people talking about this is a brown issue.
No, it's not a brown issue.
This is not a Desi thing.
This is global advice.
This is not a South Indian thing.
No, and I'm raised Christian, so I know a lot of churchy things that hold me back, right? So I'm talking cross-culturally, cross-religions. There are many things that serve us. There are these guiding principles. They're very important. There's a lot of it is done with good intention. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I really value our culture and all of that stuff. But this is global. This is not the struggles of the South Asian community. This is a lot of communities. But the mental barriers I'm talking about are those fear-based ones that aren't serving us.
One that you beat.
The one, are you trying to, you want me to highlight one that I beat?
Yeah, in your 26 years of being around, being a young person.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to pick a work-related one because my previous boss, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's like a huge mentor of mine. And someone observed, because we have a very good camaraderie.
Right.
Right? And someone had made the comment that I'm disrespectful to him. And I think if people see the way I talk, it's very candid. And if you don't know the depth of a relationship I have with someone, you could probably say that. And I was hurting because I thought he thought that.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going like, now he's my boss. He thinks I'm disrespectful. And it meant that I needed to go into a space that he sees me cry. And at work, I don't want people to see me cry. Like, let me cry at home. I don't want to cry in front of you. And that was for work. I'm going to pick that work scenario. A lot of people know about my personal story around divorce, but this work one was hard because I needed to let my boss see me cry. And I shut the door and I was shaking inside. And I remember addressing this comment that someone made. And I made it such a big deal in my head because it didn't even faze him like that.
Right.
Because the key question I asked him is, I don't care what that person thinks. I'm like, do you think I'm disrespectful to you? And it choked me to ask that because I thought he was going to say yes.
Right.
But he was saying no.
That's awesome.
I'm like, people don't understand you and me. That's why.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but that fear of that conversation in a work scenario was really hard because I wanted to keep that impression. I'm a professional girl, all of that stuff. But no, I had to let him see me cry. But that moment allowed me to have a really important moment with him when I was struggling through a lot of things in my personal life and needed to let him know a couple of years later.
Wow.
Because he needed to kind of ease off a little bit. And there were a lot of pressures coming at me. And so it allowed us to get deeper. This is what I mean about meaningful relationships. And so in a work scenario, in my public speaking life, I talk about divorce. The most difficult conversation was with my parents. But I had my brother in the room.
Okay.
So I think that helped me there. And there was a safe go. Fearful ones are when it's just me and the other person.
Right. No,
and I think it's coming at me a different way. But it opened the doors to more meaning, right? So I've never regretted challenging that. And I'm always challenging that. So.
No, that's amazing. I mean, part of what this masterclass is about is not just sharing, sort of the viewpoints you've gathered through your experiences, but people to go, hey, I had that moment, and you had that moment, and now we've empowered somebody through YouTube or Facebook or this podcast to be like, okay, there's another person that's gone through some stuff.
Yes.
And at the minimum, they have a plan to do something.
Yes.
Or they can always reach out and say, hey,
yes,
I
please
heard
reach
this,
out. I'm there.
Right?
I'm there.
And we all need that one extra person to just lean on. So I'm glad you shared that. Thank you for sharing it. Tip number 5. And I'm kind of sad that we're at tip number 5.
Tip number 5. Okay, so this is going to sound very, I don't know, like it's a traditional advice. Show appreciation. Okay? I'm going to end with that one because show appreciation and then show them. Share that in words and action, okay? So showing appreciation for relationships is actually the other person knowing that they're important in your life. Why are they important? And I kind of have this, it sounds a little morbid when I say this, but I'm like, I always feel like I live life without regrets, that people around me know I love and care about them, that if anything happened to me the next day, they had no doubt. Right? So I take it upon myself to send that text message, to be cheesy. It's okay to be cheesy with those you love and care about, and show them in words and action. And I say words and action because I'm going to refer to the 5 love languages. A lot of people know about this, that people receive love. There's a primary love language they have, and I didn't understand this fully.
I don't fully understand it.
Okay, so let me enlighten you. So people feel the most loved in specific ways. So there is words of appreciation, and physical touch isn't sex people. I'm talking about like hugging, holding hands, like that physical intimacy, right? And then there's gifts, there's acts of service, and quality time.
Right.
Okay. So, but what when I feel the most loved, and there's a test. So Gary Chapman wrote this book called The 5 Love Languages. There's a free online test you can take. You answer about 35 questions, and it actually pops up what your primary love language is. Yeah, and how you receive love and feel loved the most.
Oh, I tried that.
Yeah, it's actually very cool. And because you actually start realizing, things start popping up. You're like, yeah, I feel so amazing. So I found out for me, it always equates that 2 pop up exactly the same score. Okay. And it's words of appreciation and physical touch. I love hugging. I love like holding my kids' hands. Like I love the embrace.
Right.
And so, and the words of appreciation, like, you know, feeling like I did a good job, or you look great today, or you're so nice. Like it actually has an impact on me. I feel like, okay, like what I'm doing, you receive.
Right,
and I receive love when you say that to me. Like there's a sense of, it's not validating me, it's actually making me feel loved.
Right.
In that
And that's the
moment.
big difference. People think it's about validation, but it's not validation.
It's not validation. I actually like, you know, thank God I feel confident, self-esteem, all of that stuff. I've embraced certain parts of my life I couldn't embrace in my 20s. And it's more that I actually feel loved and cared about, you know, when that's said. And so quality time is actually, you can't time splice with someone who quality. You're like, thanks, Yvonne. You can't time splice with someone where quality time is their biggest area of feeling loved, right? And when you identify that a friend of yours quality time is their thing, looking at the phone is going to make them feel like, you know, so I'm working on that one. Gifts, I'm not big on gifts, but sometimes gifts could be actually a little flower, or it could be some grand gesture. But some people feel love when you spend the money on them. And, you know, some can say that's superficial. I've actually come to accept that that's just how they feel loved, right? And if you accept that about people, you actually communicate and have a better interaction with them, and don't fight it. Like, just don't fight it. You know, there's some things that I'm like, oh, that's kind of superficial. But I'm like, well, I'm kind of superficial in other ways too. Like, it's just, don't fight it. So when you, so for my girlfriends, I realized we're very honest with each other. And one of my girlfriends like, you take advantage of my presence in your life. I'm like, oh, here we go again. Like, you know, but then what I realized is when we did the love languages, because you can apply it to your friends too, is her way of showing love and receiving love, because usually actually show love in the way that you receive love, thinking that's the way, right? Is acts of service. So when she comes to my events and helps me, or like when I'm having a bad day and we just go for a walk, and you know, for her, that's how she shows love, her act of service, right? And me, I'm just using words of appreciation. I'm like, hey girl, love you. And it's like, she's like, all right, like that was just whatever.
Come clean my kitchen.
Yeah, she's just like, spend time, you know, come, let's do things together. So when I understood that, I realized like doing things for her, whatever it is, like that's how she will receive love. And I'll throw the words in and all of that other stuff, right? So this works for every relationship. Like when you understand, and I actually, this is crazy because at work I brought like 30 tests, and I was like, guys, let's do this for lunch.
That's awesome.
And and then some took it to their partners, and you know, I'll go there and do that. But then you understand people receive love different ways, you know, and then they give it different ways, so you recognize it differently. You're like, oh, they did that for me, you know. Awesome, man. So show appreciation. Yes, was show appreciation. Yvonne. Okay, let me recap. Number 1, know thyself, which is a cornerstone in anything you want to do from going forward. Like you can become I'm not going to say better version. You can become a more truer version of yourself. Yes, truer version. If you don't start to know about yourself. Create meaningful moments. I love how you defined it, right? Great relationship is micro moments that are, the way I heard it, are stitched together to create this really awesome relationship. So whether it's your brother, whether it's your mom, whether it's your girlfriend, whether it's your wife, whether it's your coworkers, right? It's these meaningful moments, which is awesome. Understand before being understood. I love it. Active listening. I don't do a good job of it because I'm constantly like, I got something to say, but I'm not letting people finish. And so that's really important. But the anchor in that tip for me is being vulnerable, like opening yourself up to letting other people sort of, you know, build that trust with you, which is great. Number 4, don't let fear be the barrier. Don't let fear. We talk about this a lot. Over the last 8 episodes, a lot of them from, you know, Ricardo and finance to Sinniah and the app, this topic of being
fearless and constantly sort of breaking barriers
Yes.
is an important one. And if you watch all of those episodes, which you must have, getting
Amazing
up to now,
episodes.
you'll see that common thread. Whether you're
It
an
is.
entrepreneur, right, or whether you're trying to impact people through, you know, what you're doing.
Yes.
We're all afraid of something.
Yeah.
I am scared of a ton of shit. Failure, not being remembered,
Yeah.
being a bad dad. But they're all in my head,
Yeah.
and nobody else is in my head but me. And I just got to start going, okay, what's the next one? How do I break it? And I love this last one, show appreciation.
Yeah.
And even the fact that there's a test you can take.
Yes,
That'll tell
there
you
is a
how
test
you
you
love
can
how you love to receive love from others. Which,
yes.
you know, when you were talking, I was sort of going back to when I was dating my wife, and I would buy her stuff because that's what my dad has done to my mom. So I would buy like jewelry or clothes or whatever, and she hated them all. Not maybe hate, but it wasn't her style. And I was very like, if I don't like it, I don't care who gave it to me. It goes into this closet.
Yeah. We have that section.
And there's another closet with all the stuff. But you know, I find like when we go out for dinners and get out of the house and have like a nice meal.
Yeah.
That for her is love versus like
yeah.
here's a new earring and you know and I'm sure she'd be like I want that earring too, dude. And she's hearing it.
That and the 4 other love languages.
But it's been really interesting to learn that.
Yeah, it's a
over
predominant
time.
one, right? It's our primary, and that's important for you to know.
Yeah.
It's a really great. Actually, that test is. It's actually primarily for couples.
Yeah.
It's amazing because you actually start seeing things.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you picked up on that. Actually, thank you.
So to close this off, let's
Yes.
talk about this path you're taking. So how do you onboard clients if people want to work with you?
Yeah.
I imagine this like beautiful office with a couch and like people come and sit and you're at the other side. You're like, okay, let's start today. Like,
I've got, okay,
like,
so
what's
let's
your
see
work?
how you can connect. Yeah, so there's YvonneSinniah.com. You can go on there and connect with me there. And you can email me and message me. But essentially, you are going to have me as your closest friend. Like, I have your back, right? I'm going to hear you out. And I don't come up with, like, some formula because I think everyone's struggling with different areas.
Sure.
So I spend the first session. So once someone's like, I want to onboard, I want to work with you, you know, we go session by session. And we see if I'm the right fit. Because I actually feel like people should feel like, you are that close friend I want having my back.
Right.
And I'm okay if I'm not the right fit. Like, see, my whole point is that I want you to succeed in your life. I feel like I'm doing that with my life. I want that for others. So when we have that fit, then I start the questions. Like, I'm starting to get to know you, starting to find what your mental barriers are. And then we have session by session. My writing, I still have. I speak at events, so I get called to do speaking. And I have an office, but I also do FaceTime, and you know, there are all sorts of different ways I try to support people. It doesn't have to be at my office. We find a mutual space.
Sure.
So all of that, I try to be as accessible as possible.
Yep.
And I love opportunities like this because I feel like we're reaching masses doing this stuff.
No, it's
right?
incredible,
so
man.
This
I
is my
really
work.
appreciate
This
it,
is
yeah.
my work. Like, it's not just the one-to-one, right? So I
5
really appreciate
tips
it.
from a master.
5 tips.
And it's the masterclass. Today we talked about relationships. And there's so much more that I want to talk, but we only have X amount of time. But I want you guys to reach out to Yvonne.
Thank you.
Take her out for a coffee. Ask some questions. These are real people with real ideas, real tactics, real actionable steps that you can start to take as of now. Like when this video stops, and we'll have a link below for the test, hopefully.
Yes.
Go take it, understand it, and the very next person you meet, start to think about how you're behaving.
Yeah.
It starts that fast. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Satish. Oh my God, this is amazing.
Should we
Thank
say
you,
something
guys.
in Tamil on the way out?
I don't know. What, vanakkam?
Vanakkam makkale. This has been great. I don't know why I have an accent.
I don't know. All of a sudden.
It's your boy Sats.B. Thank you for watching episode 9 with Yvonne. We'll be back with another episode soon. Shout out to Stan. Always got my back in the back. I love you too,
Stan.
Peace.
Thank you.